Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about how to get your custom SPFx web part styled and designed to look just like out of the box web part. Here you go. This is the SPFx web part that we're going to build in this video. We're going to style it. As you can see, it responds to the different background colors, and we're going to go into a deep dive on Fluent UI. I bring out the whiteboard. We talk about Fluent UI, containers, spacing, margins, float, vertical alignment, you name it, we're talking about it. Welcome to the SPFx Fluent UI Deep Dive. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. There's a lot to unpack here, but I'm going to try to walk you through systematically just the steps that are needed. So it really is going to fall into probably 4 main steps that you have to do in order to get your custom web part to kind of look very similar to what we have out of the box. Now, I went ahead and picked on the Quick Links out of the box web part and have it configured to show outlines. So let me just double check. So I'm doing the button layout with the outline button appearance, and then my title text is going to be the 2-line versus the single line. And you can say when I select 2-line, it gives me more height to play with, so that way I can get 2 lines of the title to kind of fit in there. Now you notice that I did not use the description function. So right now what we're going to do, we're going to style this for title, 2-line title. And then maybe, because in our data we are bringing back the description for the link, and maybe what we can do, we can have that as a toggle similar to what the out of the box web part does, so that the content managers can toggle that on or off. All right, so the other thing, so that's going to be the one thing. So the one thing we have to do is use the Flexbox. That's going to allow us to do this dynamic wrapping. It's going to allow us to do better spacing as far as keeping things in the middle, making sure it supports dynamic content. It's going to allow us to, there's additional CSS we can apply to hide the extra content, because what I have here is a very long text as indicated here. So there's a lot more to this title that meets the eye, and I have the ellipse to kind of indicate that. We want to replicate that. More importantly, we want to support section background colors as well as section sizing. And when I talk about section sizing, what I mean is that if I put in a new, or let's just change this. If I change this, right, and make this section to support 1/3 right, right? So here I'm going to do the 1/3 right. Let me duplicate this out of the box web part, copy it over here, and notice one thing, what happens. When it has enough real estate, it has the 2-column stack. When there's not enough real estate, it has a single stack. And it's aware of the width or the dimensions of the section, and that way it adjusts itself accordingly to do more. So we want to be able to support that as well with our out-of-the-box web part. So first things first, let's go ahead and wire this up to support section backgrounds. What I have here is a cheat sheet, and I have a section background section in all the plugs that changes or modifications we need to do for that. And then I have enabled the section size section, so that way we kind of get the width of the current size that the web part is in, and then we can use that to manipulate the CSS. And here you can see some examples of us building reusable methods. For that, we create our own enums, so that way if the size come in one way, we can say the section size is small, or it's a medium 2/3, or a medium 50%, or it's a large, or the jumbo. The jumbo is where, you remember how you create the section and you do that full width, usually for like images or the hero web part that goes from edge to edge. That's a jumbo, and we can support that as well. And then also in the cheat sheet, I have, and I'm going to have a link to this in the description field. I got some of the key pieces that we need to understand when we're dealing with Flexbox. So understanding with Flexbox, you have a couple of options here. The Fluent UI, which is what we're going to use to help style this, they have their own component called stack and stack item. Really, the stack is the Flexbox container. Stack item is the children that are being manipulated within that container. I haven't had a lot of luck with that, only because I'm new to Flexbox And what that component does is split some of the properties related to Flexbox into different properties, right? So there's like a token, then there's like an interface for styles, and then you have the generic interface for class names. It was just super confusing for me, and it was hard for me to find where things were stored. So when I'm a default to, I'm gonna just go straight up raw out of the box, Flexbox with standard HTML tagging, and we're not going to use the stack and stack item for that. But just be aware that the stack item does exist in the Fluent UI. Microsoft on the Fluent UI side does say that this is a complement or supplement for Flexbox. I would rather just go, because the support in the tutorials and the information about Flexbox and its capabilities and examples and samples are widely available on the Flexbox space and not so much on the stack. And that's why for that piece, I'm gonna stick with the industry standard. All right, so let's scroll to the top. Let's go ahead and wire up our project to support background colors. So to do that, what I want to do is go into our manifest. We need to drop in this tag. So if I go to the manifest section, drop in this tag. I usually start with the manifest version. Just go ahead and insert it there. And you would notice also if I'm doing anything with the Graph API to set up my API permissioning, I would do something very similar. So here, let's just go ahead and save it. Understand that I have a gulp serve running now. I should probably stop it because any changes you make to the manifest, you need to restart your Node.js browser engine or whatever it's called. I don't know the proper term for that, but the thing that's serving up the site, right, within Node. So what I'm going to do, let's do a Control-C. Let's go ahead and stop it. We went ahead and make the modification there within our manifest. The next thing we need to do is to start dropping in the elements that are needed for the component. Now, I'm not building this from scratch. And reason being is because, one, this is a set and forget, right? So once you have this up and running, you never have to touch it again. And you configure it once for your web part. And once it's running for your web part and configured for your main component, it's going to propagate down and be available for all the child components that main component interacts with. So it's I'm doing a lot of copy and paste, and that's not my nature. You guys know me by now that I like to build things from scratch and explain it away. But everything that I'm doing here, you will see on the Microsoft site. So if you do a Google search on SPFx support section background color, that's going to land you in the spot to where you can see all these snippets, code snippets that I'm using here. Some of these may be unique to me because like this line right here, I named the property for my main component that's in the interface, this name here, theme variant, but this piece here came from the snippet. So it's going to be a little mix, very small mix of the things that I'm personalizing just for my project and the pattern that we're following, right? So this one here, we need to pass this to the component property. So again, we're still in the web part. This is where I would go here. It's going to spit up because it doesn't understand this. We haven't defined this yet. So now, and I think I kept it at the very bottom. In the component interface, we need to define that if we're going to pass it as a property. So let's go to the component interface, define it here. What did I paste? I think I pasted the import statement. Here's my import statement. And here's the property. And it's going to reference the type that I want to name this property, and that's going to be the same as variant. I did a Control S there to save it. Now if I go back to my web part, now I have a red squiggly on this side. So this part is satisfied as far as the property, but when I'm passing it, it's not yet defined. So there's this underscore theme variant, and that underscore theme variant is this nastiness right here. So I'm gonna grab it from the beginning of that comment tag, and I'm gonna go all the way to the end of this comment tag, copy it, and then in my web part, I'm gonna go to this last closing tag, and I put a note to self here, and this just lets me know this is the end of the class, right? And I'm gonna paste it right below the end of that class. And notice I gave it a lot of headroom because I want to keep it set, because I'm going to play here a lot, right, throughout this project, right, and even the life cycle of this web part. I may be adding web part properties and all the other stuff, but this right here, I'll never have to touch. That's why I'm scooting it all the way at the bottom, tucking it away so it's out of the way and not part of my normal maintenance cycle. All right, so once I do that, I'll do a gulp build. And right now, I just have everything wired up. I'm not using that theme yet. I'm just telling the web part that says, hey, we support themes. Oop, I got a red squiggly there. What's going on? Error TSS, error after exit, build, something about an argument. What happened? Oh, I probably didn't save everything. So let's do this. Let's do save all. Tell you, that's your biggest gotcha. Naming variables and remember to save is going to be your biggest Achilles heel. All right, so now we got a clean bill of health, so now we're ready to rock and roll. Again, what I was saying, I just have this thing wired up. I told my manifest, hey, we support themes. I wired up my web part. It says, hey, give me all the theme information. When the theme changes for your section background and stuff like that, let's go ahead and pass that in. And now in my props, I'm expecting this property to be hydrated with my theme. So now what we want to do in our main component is to go ahead and make reference to that. So here in the main component, we want to make a reference to this guy. It's called a customizer. That's a component that we use that will adjust and tell the other Fluent UIs how to present themselves or what theme to present, right? If you're doing the dark theme, and all this other good stuff. So we're going to see this in action here shortly. So here I go to the quick links, to my main component. Let's go here to the top. I already have that there because I was playing right before this video. So if I go ahead and bring that in, notice that I already have a reference to this. Let me remove this because I want to build this from scratch and I want this to follow the story. All right, so here I got the customizer here. I got rid of that old residue. Again, you don't get that with the project. I had that in there because I was prepping for this video and that was residue that did not get deleted. Now that I have that customizer in there, I'm going down to my render method. Remember, the pattern that we've learned from other not SPFx, React developers, right, from tutorials, YouTube videos, Pluralsight, whatever the case may be, the thing that we learn is that when they create their components, especially class components or in functional components, the render or the return that returns the JSX is always the last thing in the file. So, and that makes it easy, right? So if you maintain it and you know you need to modify the UI, just skip all this noise, go straight to the bottom, and the markup that you're looking for that you need to modify is going to be there. So let's do this customizer, bring this component in. And that's going to be this guy here. Go ahead and close the tag. It only wants one parent tag, so now I need to make that adjustment here. And then I got my quick links. So everything else is fine. I just want to wrap all of this markup with that customizer, right? And now that I have that set in my cheat sheet, I have the magic attribute here. So we did all that plumbing just to make this call right here. And as soon as you make this call, it's magical, all right? So this just works, right? Because I made sure that in my interface, I use this name so that way when I pass it in as a prop, it's all together and ready to rock and roll. This is the thing. This is the property that I need to set. And this is the property and the object that I'm setting. This is just a settings object, the prop for this component here. It's following the same standard that we're customizing in our custom components, right? So let's do this. Let's make sure everything is saved. Let's check our health. Make sure we have a clean bill. All right, and this looks good. All right, so let's go ahead and serve it up. Let's start our web server. That's what it's called. It's called a web server in Node.js. All right, so we can skip this, right? This is our local host, and this is just me trying to stay organized, especially for this video. I can get very lost in the shuffle. So now here's our web part. I refresh that. Let's go back. Look what happened. The white background that we were forced with is gone. If I go to the section color here, change it to the light gray, That looks good. Change it to a background where my text is expected to be darker than the background because the background's light. It really is these two ends of the spectrum that you test. Everything in the middle is just sugar, right? We didn't do any CSS to make this happen, right? And a lot of this is done for you out of the box. There's no JavaScript, there's no fancy logic, there's no special CSS. All of this is done for you out of the box. You just have to know how to wire it up in the SPFx world, right? This is what I just showed you is a SPFx Fluent UI thing, right? Is if you're doing straight up React, you're not going to see anything like this, right? It really depends on your UI framework on how you have to jump through those hoops to support dark theme or light theme and everything in between. All right, so now that we wired up, let's get busy with setting up our markup. Now, to set up our markup, we got the customizer. That's going to make sure that we're section color compliant and supporting that. And now what I'm looking at, let's talk through this a little bit because we're going to use this as an example of how we want our web part to function and how we want our web part to be styled. We want to go with, because our content managers are used to this, right? So when you start talking quick links, right off the bat, they're going to say, oh, I can do a quick links with an icon, a text, and a border, and and all the other 50 million configurations that they get out of the box. So we're going to hone them into one, right? So here we want to do a border. It's going to have a nice round edge on that to kind of take the sharpness off. There's an icon. This is going to be static, right? We're not going to allow them the flexibility that they get out of the box where they can choose each icon. Our title is going to support being very long, right? And when you get out of bounds, it's going to dynamically truncate itself in an elegant way, right? The same way out of the box does it. And then the spacing and everything else, that's what we're targeting. So most of this spacing, the alignment, and all that is going to be Flexbox. Flexbox is your alignment or I was going to call it a grid system, but the Flexbox is a different type of system. Grid is one. Flex, I don't know if it's flexing the second one or the Flexboxing the second one, but understand it's just a different methodology on how do you do spacing and stuff like that. This seems like what Microsoft is leveraging with their out of the box, right? And they may mask it with that stack item, but anyway, understand that we're dealing with flex, right? We're not going to be dealing with column small, column extra small, column medium, pull this, pull that. That's the grid system. What we're going to be doing is mostly, let's look at our cheat sheet. It's going to be mostly flexing, wrapping, align center, justify this, justify that, and then we're going to get a little bit more fancy about how we're going to go about this. All right. So the first thing, where should we start? Let's start with the container and work our way inwards, right? So for a container to activate the Flexbox, and here's the good news: Flexbox is a standard CSS thing, right? But it has a switch that must be turned on at the container level or the parent tag level to tell CSS to say, oh, we're using Flex. So now, when they call this CSS class and this definition, this definition, respond accordingly, right? So there's a suite of definitions that only come into play when the parent container is defined as such. Normally we would have like a block, a display block, or display none, or display whatever. Here we're doing display flex, and then that's going to activate these guys and make these available. There's no library to bring in. That's the beauty of it, right? You can, wherever CSS is available for modern browsers, this capability should be available to you as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about, this is my whiteboard plan. Okay, let's talk about a couple key rules of the Flexbox game. One, you have to have a container, and we're used to this, right? And if you're dealing with a grid system, you use what containers. Within there, you're going to have children. Let's just make this edge to edge. There's a scenario where maybe this is a little bit wider. I know these look the same, but ignore it. And in that scenario, we want this type of relationship between our child boxes. I think they call them boxes, right? So in between our child boxes, this is what we want, our child elements, right? Flexbox does support nesting, right? So imagine if you had to put a container around here and then start to flex everything that's inside of that. And that's what we have with our icon, right? So imagine this red is another flex container, the black is a flex container, and that blue is actually going to be our hyperlink. And what do I mean by that? If you look at this, if I do it in preview, notice my cursor. It turns to the pointer cursor, either regardless if I'm directly on the icon or directly on the title. As soon as I enter the box, it turns into that pointer cursor. That means my anchor tag is surrounding all of these elements inside of this box, not necessarily these different HTML. And that's important, right? Because we have to understand how to structure our markup to do that. And when I talk about flexing, right? So this flex container is the black. So everything inside of that is going to be is going to adhere to the rules that you set up here. Now I need to flex the icon, and I also need to flex the title within this box, right? I need to get these side by side. My markup is going to naturally stack these, right? And the icon, then the title is going to be stacked on top of each other. I need to flex them side to side, and I also need to force some vertical middle, right? Which is, you know, if you ever play around with CSS and dynamic content, the key is dynamic content. I can't guarantee the size of this title. I can't guarantee that my content manager is going to put in a title that fits nicely inside this box. There's going to be some overrun, so we have to account for that. And we have to account for, regardless if this is a title that only takes up 1 line of space or 2 lines of space or whatever the case may be, they remain vertical middle. CSS nightmares is what I'm explaining, is what we're set up for, right? Flexbox is going to make that nightmare a dream. So here we go. I think I said enough. I have enough to get started. Now, what we want to do, and I'm gonna change the pattern on you, right? Because before building anything, we're taught, right? And this is where we kind of go against the grain a little bit, to centralize all your CSS into one single file, right? Even if it's SAS or whatever the case may be. In this scenario, we're not going to do that. And there's a reason for it. Well, we're not going to do that for everything. We're going to split it. There's going to be parts of our CSS we need to have global, and we're going to keep those in a central location because they're reused all over the place, and we want to keep it dry. We don't want to repeat ourselves, right? And the other piece is some of these CSS components requires logic, meaning that when we get into the sizing, there's certain things we want to manipulate. So with that, we want to define our CSS right here in the component. So the first thing I want to define is a container, a Flexbox container, and I'm going to do that container right where I manipulate or spit out a collection. Now, again, this is going to be different from the previous video. I think I had a UL here for an unordered list, and then in here I defined the LI. But in this scenario, I ripped those out prepping for this video. So here we're just dealing with raw div text. Excuse me. All right, so here I want to put a flex container on top of this collection, right? Because that's the thing I want to flex. And those are going to come over as a class name, very similar to a CSS class, right? So I want to just call this container, and now I need to define it. So let's just say let container. Now watch this. Merge styles, plural. It's a method, right? Merge styles, and I need to define what that means, right? So this merge styles is a special one. It looks like it's part of the Fluent UI library. So if I click on Quick Fix, it recognizes the spelling in that and say, oh, you want this guy from this library? Yes, I do. Click on that, and then it's going to bring it in, right? Quick Fix is fancy and is helpful, right? Because most of the time I forget where these things are stored, and I forget the naming. But if I can remember the spelling of it exactly, that Quick Fix is going to go ahead and be my saving grace. So here I want to merge style. The first thing I want to do is display, and let's call it flex. right? That's going to activate the Flex component within CSS, the Flex library, engine, module, whatever it's called in CSS. This is the key piece that activates it. Now, the rule of the game is if I define that here on this div, only the immediate children or the immediate tags will be impacted by this change, right? So here I want to flex. And the other thing, let's go to our cheat sheet. The other thing I want to do, I want this side by side, right? But I want it to be smart enough that if there's not enough room to make it side by side, to stack it vertically. Flexbox does that naturally. That's what Flexbox does, right? That's the name of the game. So here, let's just do a flex row. So if I do flex direction, right, and I will take the IntelliSense, and then I put the double quotes. It's going to show me the allow options here, and we want to go row. Okay, now that's why this merge styles is important, because I'm creating this object, this style object that this class name attribute allows me to use, right? But without this merge styles, I'm guessing at all of the CSS. But with merge styles, it gives me the IntelliSense, not only of the correct CSS properties, right? Again, this is an object, right? So it has to, change the naming convention or the syntax, right, of this. Not only does it give me the right properties, but it's also going to give me the available values for that. That's all comes with the merge style. That's why this guy is super important. All right, so now that we have the direction to make it side by side, let's hold off on the wrap. Let's just see what we have here. Let's just save it. And then my Go build is running. And I wait for the purple because that lets me know that I'm part of the process to where I can now safely view it and see the latest changes. So I hit refresh here. And if I come down here, look what happened. It took all of my stack that was vertical, right? And then it started to put those side by side. And right now what it's doing is bleeding. It's doing its best to accommodate as much as it can, but it's forcing everybody on the same row. So if I had 100 of these, all 100 would be on the same row. It's not going to allow them to wrap. In some cases, that's a good thing. In some cases, you want it to wrap, right? We actually have both cases here, right? So for this scenario, we want it to wrap because if these guys are stacked and if there's enough headroom, go ahead and wrap. Let me change this to the full, right? Because this is what we're styling right now. Then we get to the other scenarios, right? So notice how you say, hey, I got a lot of real estate. But also notice another thing. Notice how the size is different, right? Compared to where we came from. The size of this for each individual box was a little bit wider when they had more real estate. That's going to come with the other one. I told you there's two things we have to support for sections. We have to support the background color, and we have to support its size, its width, right? We're going to get to the other one here in a second. All right, so now that I have these on the same row, let's just go ahead and tell it we want it to wrap. Don't force all these guys on the same. So let me just do my flex. There's my wrap. Thank goodness for syntax. Put my IntelliSense. And then here I want to do the wrap. Save it off. And now this guy should fit as much as it can on the line. And then when it gets out of bounds, it starts with the next line. You can't really tell it here because we got a lot going on. The colors are off, and we can't really tell where my children start or stop because we don't have any widths on there. So let's handle that now. Let's throw some widths in here. Ignore documents, right? Actually, let's rip documents out. See, remember when we were doing our test, I was trying to parlay and say, oh, once you get this pattern in place, this is how you can get it from a SharePoint list, and these are the small tweaks needed to get it from a document library. You get full coverage with this pattern. All right, we're past that. I think I sold you on that idea. Let's remove that for now. Let's just focus on items coming from a Quick Links SharePoint list. So let's just save this. Go back here, clean up our markup a little bit. I didn't wait for the purple. See what happens when you don't wait for the purple in the build? There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Again, it's still kind of mushy. It's still not clear to me what's what, but we're gonna clear that up here in a second. Okay, so now that I have my parent container here, and notice when I'm dealing with Flexbox, I didn't have to impact anything outside of that collection. again, I just want to impact the collection so that way I get more control over and make sure that I put the guardrails in place so it can support dynamic content. All right, so now let's go ahead and style one of these guys. So I can right click here, go to definition, and now I want to get in here and start styling this. Now, it looks like I have a nice container. That's great. I do not need to put the customizer tag in there. Again, that's a one trick pony. Once you set it once, you're good to go. I do want to start my nomenclature again with my container and then do my merge styles. Okay, I'll pick it up here. And then again, that's a method. There's my object. Go ahead and close that out. And I know I need another flex container, but that need hasn't presented itself yet. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just only thing I really need to do now is just set a width. So let's just set a width, and let's just do 200. Now notice that this object I'm working with, it accepts numbers and strings as any object does as far as setting property values. If I just set the number, it's going to get converted to 200 pixels. So the unit of measure is going to be pixels. If I wanted to use percentages, which we will, right? Because when we start looking at those scenarios where I need this thing to look nice in a single section column, in a 50-50 column, in a 2/3 right or 2/3 left, any of one of those layouts, those are going to be based on percentages, right? And so we're going to run into a scenario where we need to call out percentages. For all intents and purposes, for now, we're going to do 200, and that's going to set a cap on that width and hopefully start to define my layout. So in order for that to work, I need to bring in that class name, and let's just call that container. Right, and understand these are just like functions, right? So even though I have container defined in my parent, its scope is only to that parent. It doesn't bleed down to, it doesn't cascade, right? That's the difference. It doesn't cascade to the children. And you would notice when this renders in the reason for that, when this renders in the browser, this is actually going to render as a different CSS class name than my parent, even though from a code perspective, the variable names are the same. You're not going to get confused. It may sound confusing at first, but once you put this into practice, it makes all the sense in the world. Because the biggest thing that we run into with CSS at storing it at the global level is that out the gate, you have this beautiful system, this beautiful naming convention for all your CSS classes, everything is beautiful, right? To a certain extent. When you start to satisfy bugs and resolve issues, that naming conventions go out the window very quickly. Reason being, you have to consider the entire context before making the change. We're dealing with components. So the scope or the context of this component is within that component. It doesn't know what the parent is doing, and it doesn't know what its children are doing. It only knows what it's doing and what it will allow its children to do, and accept what its parents will allow it to do, right? That's the whole component system. So defining your CSS in this way makes all the sense in the world in the component system, right? We can't take a global strategy and try and apply it to a componentized or modularized strategy because the two won't work. Not to say there are certain pieces that are global that we still remain in the global piece, but it's not everything, right? It's actually going to be a smaller subset because our global pieces from a CSS perspective may only be that 10, 15, 20%, where everything else is just going to be germane to that particular component. So don't get freaked out when you see this double name, especially when dealing with CSS. This is not a cascading scenario here. This is just keeping things in context. My outer tag for this component is going to be container. Everything else is going to be inside of that container. All right. I just wanted to call that out because we're going against the grain with that. All right. So here we are refreshing. There we go. Now we're looking good. Now we're looking good. Look at that. Everything is compartmentalized. It's tight. When it needs to use all the space, it uses it, but it respects its boundaries. It doesn't bleed over. This is looking really good. So now what we want to do, what else do we have? We have these bounding boxes. Again, I'm on my individual child component. Let's go ahead and put a border on there, a bounding box. So here I just do border, select that guy, and then here I want to do, what's my standard? My standard is 1 pixel solid. No color. No color. Remember, we're working in the theme environment, so we're not overriding the color because you can't account for everything. No color yet. All right. So now my border radius, I think Microsoft uses a 2 pixel curve on that on the border, which is nice. The other thing, what else we want to do? Oh, we want to set. You want to define the height, right? So I'm gonna guess this height is 80. All right, so again, if I don't specify, if I just do a number, it's going to get translated into pixels. 80 pixels is a great start. Let's wait for my purple. Where's my purple? There's my purple. All right, hit refresh here. Here we go. Here we go. A little too, we overshot the height. That's fine. We can dial that in. No problem. No problem. We're looking good. No problem. All right. Here's another thing. Let's look at this. Let's inspect this a little bit closer. Our anchor tag is on the text. The description is not anchor tag. That's fine. But if we're replicating the out-of-the-box behavior, let's look at this in preview. Like I said, out of the box, as soon as I enter in that box, I'm turning into a hyperlink. I'm turning to a pointer, right? So here, my pointer only happens when I'm over my text. So we need to rearrange our markup in order to support this. The other thing is, this has an icon and title. It doesn't do in description. We're not looking at that scenario yet. Here I got title and description, no icon. So we got some work to do. All right, so let's do this. Let's rearrange our markup. So to rearrange our markup, I need this anchor tag out here on the edge, right? Right before my container. Let's do a Shift-Alt-F to get everything kosher. All right, my description, we're not ready for yet. Let's remove that. Icon, missing. Let's add it. All right, so icon is going to be, let's just type the word icon for now, right? Because we're dealing with spacing and layout right now. So Shift-Alt-F, all right. And, okay, so how are we looking? I think we're looking okay. We got title, we move, where's, oh no, come on, stack. Let's do this. Let's do this right. All right, so here's my anchor tag, wrapping my entire div. Okay, this was residue. This came with the manipulation. I like it though. I like it, and we're actually going to need it. And this is what, and I'm spending this time with you to explain the decision-making process with markup, because this is going to save you. I'm not a CSS expert. I think UI is extremely tedious. And I have great respect for those UI designers and developers, right? Extreme great respect for them, because it's tedious. I mean, to get through these cycles, it costs you a lot because it's so loosey-goosey. A lot of it's subjective. And the biggest complex piece to UI UX in this game is dynamic content. If you're dealing with a static website like brochure and stuff like that, where you can guarantee and tell your content managers, hey, you got to adjust that title because you only have that much space. That's one thing. But when you're talking about responsive design and dynamic content to support and theming, right, to where, you know, you can flip-flop the theme, that is a very complex scenario. Very complex scenario from a UI perspective. So understanding what Microsoft has done and the foundation that they set up, where the switches are and stuff like that is instrumental. So I know that we're going to need this container in order to style these guys, right? And Flexbox says if you flex this container and then you put something in between it, it can't reach these guys because this tag has to be immediate. But I can't make it immediate because I need this to hyperlink my entire situation behind my entire box. So with that, we're going to do class name, and we're going to call this a inner container, right? So ideally, I only have one container, and it's going to be the outer edge or the outer box or tag, right? But then if I have to do smaller containers inside of it or nested containers inside of it, I'm going to do an inner container. So that's one thing I'm going to do. The other thing, so I have full control, I'm going to do a container around my icon and a container around my text, right? So I'm going to do icon, C-O-N-T, which is shorthand for container in Deshaun's world. And then I'm going to do underscore text, C-O-N-T, which is it's going to give me a container around this title. And when you're dealing with dynamic content and positioning and stuff like that, you want full control over all these guys. Right? Okay, so now that we have this, what we want to do is define it, because that's why we have those red squiggly. So I'm going to just copy this, and I'm going to rip all of this out, because we want to start from scratch, and really I just want to paste this in to make it whole. And I'm going to do the same for these other two. So there's my icon. Oops, what happened? Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. I accidentally clicked on something. Don't do that to me, please. All right. And then copy this. All right, so everything is defined. I think I'm good to go. Now, I know I need to flex this. Now, the question is, how do you know you need to flex it? I know I need to flex this because I need these to be side by side, and I need these in the middle, right? Notice how this is 2 lines, this is 1 line. They're maintaining their vertical position, right? Right there in the middle. Regardless, so I can throw anything at this, and it's always going to look pretty. That's the key. Right? It's always going to look nice. My height's always going to be consistent. My gap between them is already going to be consistent. The content in the middle, I'm taming it. I'm not allowing the content to define the space. I'm defining the space and taming the content. Right? So, and that's the subject at hand. That's what we're dealing with in this scenario. There's other scenarios where you need to be flip-flopped. Okay? So here, let's just do Shift F. Let's make this here. Okay, so to contain that space, I need to flex this, right? So I need to do this in a container. So to flex it, I have to turn it on. It's not going to pick up my flex definition from my parent. I got to turn it on right here locally within this component. All right, so once I flex it, I want to tell it again. I want it to, what's my wrap? I want it to wrap. Where's my IntelliSense? How come you're not helping me? Because you have the wrong property name. There you go. Thanks for the help. All right, so now we want to, the direction. This is where you tell it to row. So if I do, let me just type in flex. The direction. Come on, man. Fingers are not working anymore. Row. All right, and basically what that's going to do, that's going to give me this row layout. I don't want it to wrap. Sorry. That's a no. I want these to stay on the same line. I want these to be consistently on the same line regardless of what's going on between them. All right, so let me save this. So flex, and then we row inner component, so that way it only impacts the icon, it only impacts the title. Let's just bring this up. Okay, look at that. Regardless of, you see this title, it's really trying to bleed, it's really trying to take up more space than what's allowed. Icon is holding this ground, it's not allowing it to bleed over. That's the other thing. Like, I didn't want this title to wrap like a sentence, right? To where you can, like, you know how you had those images back in the day, 1999, we used to kind of like put an image and then wrap the text around it, almost like a blanket. We didn't want that. We want the icon to have its column, its space, the title have its column in its space, and no bleed between them. This is happening right here. Okay, let's bring this forward. So now what we want to do, we want this in the middle. So let's look at our cheat sheet. Our cheat sheet says you're using both of these for a vertical line. Vertical line in CSS is a pain in the butt. It's almost next to impossible. Only the savvy of the savvy can really pull it off. Here we want to align item center. That's going to be our vertical. If we have to align it center, Justify content is where you do that. Again, these are things you put on the container, and because we're doing nested container, I want to put on the container right outside of what I want to impact. So here, let's just do align item center, and that's going to be this inner container. So align items, right, colon, and then center. All right, and save that off. So you refresh here. So you probably say, oh, it didn't work. What happened? These are at the tippy top. But look, this is doing what I expected to do. What's the problem? This is doing what I expected to do. These guys are not agreeing. What's the problem? The problem is, let's turn on the headlights. What I mean by turn on the headlights. Anytime I have a container that's doing something that's defining space, I want to throw in the background color so I can see exactly what that container is doing. Right? So if I throw a background color in here, let's just do a, I don't know, let's do 0 is black, F is white. Let's do a D. Let's do all D's, triple D. All right, let's wait to the purple. Turn these headlights on. Let's see what's going on. What's going on with this container? That my, there you go. See, my container height is not consistent. My text is defining the height. I don't want that. I want my parent to define the height, right? I want my parent container. Parent container is contextual, right? My parent container. So this right here is being pushed based on the amount of text that's coming in with this title. I want this height to fill up whatever height my parent, this container says to fill it up. And if I look at this definition, I don't know, will this work? Well, okay, that's nice. Okay, so look at this definition. He says, hey, your height's maxing out at 80. Play within the 80. All right. Here, I'm getting shortchanged because I'm not playing within the 80. So what I need to do, I need a height 100. Give me all of it, 100% of it. And this is what I was telling you. We need another unit of measure other than pixel, so I'm going to just wrap that in a string. I save that off, and let's just see if this blows up. All right, there's my purple. Again, you can't really tell what's going on until you turn on the headlights. So now we had the headlights on. We realized that container was not taking full advantage of the height given to it by its immediate parent. So now we had to go in there and enforce that 100, and now we should be good to go. All right, so now I got icon in there. It feels like it's part of the title. In actuality, it's not. So I need to throw some margin in there to give it some breathing room. Margin, not butter. All right, so let's go icon container. Let's do a margin. Let's do a right. That's on my right. So let's do a right margin. Let's just call it 7. Right. Also, what else? Actually, it's not bad. I need to do spacing between my different child elements. Right. Let's do a little bit spacing there. So in order to do that, I want to impact this guy, my main container. Let's go to the definition. Let's do a margin bottom. Actually, margin bottom and right. Okay, so here's what I do. If I have to define more than one margin for a element, I'm gonna just do the general margin property and then just do the around the clock. So for the top, I'm not defining anything, so I'll put a 0 there. For the right, let's do a 12. For the bottom, let's do a 20. For the left, let's do a 0, I think. Right? Now, oh, you have to put some pixels in here. Okay, let's just save this all. All right, and then I'm gonna get this close, right? To really dial these in, like I can tell that my width is off, right? Because when I'm looking at the out of the box compared to here is off. I'm definitely not interacting with Visual Studio to dial that in. All right, so I got the big bricks in place, right? Once you get the big bricks in place, or you have a definition to where you're defining your width, you have a definition where you're defining your margin and all this other stuff. Now you can go into Dev Tools and really tweak it, fine tune it, and do whatever you need to do, right? So the best way to do that is that I go into preview mode, because I'm using this, again, I'm using this as my style guide. Right-clicking on here, going to inspect. Let's move this over. Okay, now I'm going to have to squeeze a little bit. Where am I? So this is my container for my child. This is where my width is. So I'm going to slide this over. Hello, can I squeeze all these in one screen? Let's see. I want to squeeze it without it starting to respond. Yeah, I want it right there. That's it right there. Right before it starts to respond. Because I don't want my window to manipulate or alter my width. So here I have, so 160 is my outer container. That's my whole flex situation for the web part in general. 161, oh, here, this is what I wanted to point out. You notice how these have unique class names, right? Unique to the sense of that instance that I'm defining. That's why it's because of this, I can define in the code this as container and define this as container, and they don't bleed, because on render, that it knows the different instances of those and give them the same class name, right? So and this works as we expect, right? So if I want to style this, all my 161s would pick up the definition. So right here, I can just put my cursor, and I love this, right? I can put my cursor in here, eyeball it, and say, that is a 246, right? And then I can put my cursor in here and eyeball it. And what I'm comparing it to is this guy right here. So I eyeball that and say, oh, that's a, let's just call that 64. And then I got my margin out here. My margin is coming, that's top right. That's going to be this guy here, just up on the cursor. All right. But notice what happened. I'm losing this guy. Why am I losing that? Right? I don't want to lose that. Why? I don't want to lose that. Why am I losing that? There's some extra space here that's not being taken advantage of. Oh, well, no, that's the margin. What is this guy doing? Yeah, there's something weird going on there. So I want to be careful, right? I'm gonna lose this for now. I can't get that margin that I see there. That's nice and crisp out there, because I want to maintain the 3. I don't want to be in a situation where I can't do 3. So I'm gonna sacrifice this for now. We're gonna circle back to it, but for now we're gonna live with that. Okay. So now what I want to do, I want to pick up my new numbers, and my new numbers are 246 wide, 64 height. 246 wide, 64 height. All right. What else do we need to fine tune? Okay. I'm not going to style these yet, because I want to pull in my icon components before I do that. So I don't want to style those in yet. I can take that gray off. I don't need that gray anymore, right? So we're done with the headlights. So let's turn the headlights back off. We don't need this anymore. Can I just comment this out? How fancy can I get? All right, yeah, just leave those headlights. I hate dead code, right? If I need it, I'll bring it back. It's not hard to bring back. All right, so let's leave those all. All right, now what we want to do, let's bring in our real icons. So we want to bring in the Fluent UI icon. It's capital I, because it's a component. That's their naming convention. And there's my quick fix. Let's click on that. Yep, Office UI Fabric. I need to bring that in. The other thing is, I know that there's another component for text, right? So I want to bring that in. So let's just bring text in as a component, capital T. And that's the thing. So when it comes to icons and text, you want to use the Fluent UI component when and where possible. For some odd reason, it's not picking this up. How come this is not being picked up? All right, let me force it. I don't know why it's not picking it up. I think for some odd reason, it thinks I want something else. All right, so that's my text. And then the other thing we want to bring in is that you don't want to use the standard anchor tag. because you notice how those come in with a purple. If you use the Fluent UI link component, it will handle your visited links. You know how the browser by default treats hyperlinks with this purple, and then you click on it and it gives it another treatment because it's been visited. The link component, the Fluent UI link component, is going to handle that for you. So all of my A tags, I'm going to replace with these link tags with the link component. And quick fix, help me out here. Go ahead and bring that in from the fabric. All right, and then this href attribute is going to remain the same, and that's the beauty of it. Like if you design or working with a system, right, that really embraces the markup, it's going to make those available attributes that you expect available. It's not going to be feature parity. It's not going to be one-on-one, but it's going to get you very close, especially for the common use ones, right? All right, so now here we are. Let's go to this guy. Hit refresh. And this is close. If I go into preview, I'm stretching across. I'm still losing here, right? There's something about my HTML that's different from everything else, but for the most part, I am very, very close. Extremely close, right? Extremely close. Now let's do a litmus test. Oh, I brought in my icon, but I didn't bring in my icon. Okay. What do you mean by that? I brought in the icon component, but I didn't define an icon. So what is that called? Is that called icon name? Yep. And I just know this one particular icon by heart, and it's global. Oh, globe, right? And you can easily find out. If you do a Fluent UI icons, it shows you all the names of it. So by bringing in the icon component, it would bring in the globe icon, and this definitely needs to be styled, right? This is why you put these containers on that, because now I need to do a special style for this icon only, and it's just like any other CSS icon or like font awesome type icon. You can use the font size to change its size, font color to change its color. Let's just go with a 12 pixel for now. I can dial that in. The other thing that's very clear is that I need a margin. I need some type of padding on this, and notice, like I could do a margin on the icon, but I think I prefer to do a padding on the whole container, right? Because it's a padding that's a 360, right? It's all around this guy, not just for the icon. The icon would be affected if I do it in the right spot. So what I want to do, and I didn't say that. So in order to do the padding around that, I can do it here at the container, or I can do here at the inner. So let's just do it at the container level. I think that makes more sense. So there's my margin, and now I just want to do a padding. And this is going to be an all-around padding. Let's just put this here. And let's just eyeball it for 5. Okay? Eyeball it for 5. Waiting for the purple. There's the purple. Hit refresh. All right. So now let's dial it in. I think I have 5 is definitely not enough. I think I have it, and that's the other thing. Like once you put that padding in there, you probably have to adjust your height. You probably have to adjust your height to make things true. And this one's actually still showing way too much text. We only want to do 2 lines. So let's dial in both of these guys. Let me switch over to preview. I feel like I'm responding now. Oh, let me just slide this over. Just enough so I can hit that. So let me hit preview, hit inspect. Here we are, 166. What should we be? To impact the padding, 161. Yeah, 161. All right, so now if I do padding, put my cursor over here, arrow up. Notice how this thing is growing. So you're gonna have to balance this now. Do you feel this is the same padding all the way around? I don't know. And it's hard for me to really eyeball this because this globe is way off. So let's fix this. Just the font size for that. What is it, 20, 24, 22, 22. All right, let's go with 22. All right, so now we have that. My padding is way too big now, so I have to adjust everything. I have to adjust my outer width and margin. So let's just do the width. Let's arrow that in. All right, let's plus it a little bit. And then my height, let's arrow that in. All right, and that's about right. And then my margin, top, right, bottom, so right. Let's see. Oh, that's still giving me problems, huh? And top, right, bottom. I think my bottom's too wide. There you go. And I'm looking at this to get the bottom. All right, so top right. Let's just pull this in. I need the 3. I need the 3. I'm a sacrifice, but I need the 3. We're so close. There's small tweaks, but I'm gonna leave that up for your eye. We're super duper close, right? Here's the one thing we have to account for. So let me go back and get my numbers. So actually, for my width, and that's the thing, I can't copy and paste this, right? But let me throw it in Notepad, so now I can at least transfer the numbers over. All right, so for I'm 223 now because I added in a bunch of padding, and my border is still the same. My height is 38 now, not 64. So I'm trimmed there. And then my margin combination is 11, 15, 0. So 11, 15, right? The other thing was we changed the font size for our icon, and that's a 22 now. So let's go into our icon container. There should be a 22. 12 is way small. Margin right, I think it's still true. Yeah, I don't think, let me just save this, make sure I don't lose it. Okay, so I think I got everything. Oh, I think I got everything. All right, let's impact this. Let me just make sure I refresh this. Still true. I feel like I forgot something. I did. Did I not get the right height? Yeah, I don't think you got the right height, Deshaun. What was my height? My height was 38. Did I transpose 38? Here's my height here. Padding 5. Oh, it has a 12 padding. That was I missed the padding. The padding is going to push everything. That's how we got into this mess in the first place. We added the padding later in the game, so we had to go and retrofit all of our other dimensions. All right. So now we're good. We're good. If I do preview, we should be good still. Yep. It's starting to look one exact. I was getting confused. I was like, wow, this thing is replicating over here, but this is custom. This is out of the box. We're really, really close, right? You can dial in like this stuff here. You can dial in the height here and the vertical, but the biggest eyesore is this guy right here. We should only be something similar to this. So in order to do that, we have to define a height on our text container, right? So this title is out of bounds. It's just is going crazy. It's going crazy. Now you can define it here, or you can define it on the inner. And I'm trying to see if there's any repercussion of defining it in one spot or the other. Maybe we no, I think we already defined the height here, right? Let's go to definition. Yeah, we're 100 here because it needed to fill up the whole spot, and that's going to impact our anchor tag. So the right spot to define it is here. So go to definition, which we have 0 definitions here. So let's just do a height, and again, I'm gonna spitball this. Let's just do 20, and then I'm gonna do an overflow. I'm gonna hide it, because if you're beyond that 20, I don't want you to bleed. I want you to hide. And let's just save it, and let's see how far we get with that. All right, so let's hit refresh. Where are we? Wow, that was too much. That was too much. I took it down to a one-liner. It's working. It's just it's only a one-liner. All right, so here's my span tag. Let's just make sure this is my text. Yep, there's my text right here. And what do I do with my height? My height. Wait, should I be outside of here? Yep, my height's a 20. Hit my arrow keys. There they go. Ooh, not good. Not good. You see where we are now? If I got 2 line, I'm dead middle, which is nice, but I need all of this in the middle, even when I'm not 2 line. If I'm only a single line or 2 line, I only need 1. Okay. So the question is going to be, where should we adjust that? It may be, let's see, if I mouse over this, I wonder if this should be max height, to where, because what we're doing, we're trying to, there it is. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to keep this height to the max of this level, but I was strong arming it by making it the entire height that level. And that's why I was competing with the single line that didn't really require all of that height. So by doing a max height, you tell it, use what you need, but you can't go beyond 41. And that's the trick. So now if we take a look at the icon, so we had to do that max height 41, and then the icon, just to kind of help center this, we probably should do a, we probably should throw a padding, let me see, we probably should throw a top margin in here. Let's see, if you do a margin top, let's just do 12 pixel, that's too much. And right, 7 looks like the magic number. And then what we have this extra margin over here. I already have a right margin. I just need to fine tune it. And that's going to be 10. All right, so let's get our numbers down. So we got right margin 10, top 7, and that's for the icon. So 10 and then top 7. So if I look at the icon, so right 10 and then mark. Okay, so since I'm setting more than 1, what I want to do is, so top 7, 10 right, and then 0 for everything else. And then the other number I need to grab is going to be this one. It's going to be, let's see, what do we have? We had the height, right? So if I'm looking, okay, so for my, it's just for my text. So for my text container, I need to change the height to a max height and then 41. So my text container, instead of this being that, we should do max height 41. All right, let's save this and see if this works. Okay, so that looks like that's going to do the trick. That's going to do the trick. And I would say for the most part, we are, man, we're so close. We're so close. So we're losing this part of the game, which is fine. I mean, I'm not going to cry over spilt milk. I mean, the fact that these are so close together is really, really good. If there was a scenario where they had these side by side in this type of layout, it would look odd, but I really want to say this is very, very close. Now, in the next video, what we'll probably do, we'll go over some tweaking. I think that's enough for this one. Like we cover a lot as far as Flexbox, styling, using margins, paddings, the rules for Flexbox with nesting and some of the rules there, as well as supporting the section background color and things along those lines. So I think we cover a heck of a lot in this video. But the thing that's missing, and I think the next video, especially if it's just on styling, is going to be very quick, because the thing that's missing is, one, how do you get this to work in different sizes, right? So now that we have this, let me show you what the problem statement is going to be. The problem statement is going to be this. Now that we have this styling, right, you notice how quick links kind of collapse and take up the full width. This is only single, right? So it's doing what Flexbox does, but it's leaving a lot of real estate on the table. So we want to be able to, one, adjust this to where it takes up enough real estate. But then if you look at this in preview, the out of the box one converts to a 2-column, right? So there's enough real estate for us to do 2-column. In this scenario here, it just doesn't understand that. And that's when section sizes come into play. Because when you do the section size, now your web part becomes smart enough to say, hey, I'm in this section, here's the max width. This is how I need to reassess my strategy on the layout. And that's how that's going to be played out. And the same here in the 2/3. I don't know why, and you only get this with the workbench, where you get this weird layout here, and then you go preview, and then it kind of snaps to the real world scenario. That's just a workbench thing. Don't worry about that. But the thing to worry about is that when you're in this scenario, you want these to be 100% versus the fixed 80. Right now it's trying to do 80 on everything, but here at the individual piece, you actually want to stretch these out depending on its section scenario. So that's the piece we want to tackle. And then the last thing in the next video, what we want to tackle, when I bring in the quick links, one, this name is nasty, right? You notice the naming convention that the out of the box looks, right? I mean, they have the name and then a space, a nice friendly name, and then a space and the icon to kind of represent it. So if we look at ours, our quick links is using the default icon. We want to change this. We want to clean our name up. And again, just moving to that step forward of how do you have a custom web part when style looks like the out of the box web part, and then also from a styling behavior behaves and reacts like the out of the box web part. So that way to your content managers, it feels one and the same. They're comfortable mixing and matching. And then to the end user, they really can't tell the difference what's out of the box and what's custom. All right, that's it for this video. Thanks for hanging in there. I know that this could be tedious. I know this can be somewhat dry to go through, but it's a much needed, it's a necessary evil, if you will, in order to make sure that we're styling things the appropriate way. And we're really taking advantage of what the framework provides to us from a SPFx perspective. All right, that's it for this video. See you in the comment section. If there are questions, hit me up in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself.